Welcome to the Highlights Show. I'm Phil Kessler.
And I'm Amy Ryan. It's great to be here.
Okay, let's unpack this. I'm still coming back to that core argument from the webinar. It honestly challenges like decades of assumptions I've had about creative work.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that just putting in your 10,000 hours doesn't. It doesn't actually guarantee advancement in creative capacity.
Right.
Not unless that practice is guided by a specific intentional curriculum.
Yeah.
It totally reframes just practicing.
It does. And what's so fascinating is how they pulled developmental psychology directly into the artistic process. The core argument is it's really powerful. Creative ability, just like cognitive ability or even adult emotional maturity, it's not an accident.
Yeah.
It follows a stage level progression. They were pulling from Piaget for the foundation, Keegan for the adult side, and then Mezirow for for how the change actually happens.
And the one distinction they kept hammering home, which is so necessary to avoid this just sounding like a critique of someone's art, is the difference between capacity and value.
Exactly. They were so clear that the 6 levels describe ability and capacity like your maximum operating level to perceive complexity, to choose, to hold nuance in your work.
Right.
It's absolutely not a moral ranking system or an aesthetic one. A level 1 piece of music could be commercially brilliant or emotionally vital.
Sure.
But the question is, what's the complexity ceiling of the artist who made it?
So it's about how much complexity the creative brain can handle, not whether the result is good or bad. The mission then is to help you, the listener, figure out how to stop just, hoping that years of trial and error lead to growth and instead be intentional about moving up that arc.
Which means we really have to start with the human framework. The fact that they made Robert Keegan's work on adult development so central, that was unexpected.
It was.
But it makes total sense once you see the mapping.
I was still struggling a bit with that jump from being subject to your inner narratives to making them object. Can you give me a clear musical example of that? Like, does being subject to my style mean I literally can't write outside of a certain key or tempo?
It's a bit subtler than that, but yeah, it fundamentally restricts your choice. Being subject to your style means the style defines you.
Okay.
You feel compelled to use that specific drum sound or that harmonic progression because it's part of your identity. You can't consciously choose to discard it because discarding it feels like discarding a part of yourself.
So if I'm subject to whatever the current trend in production is, I'm basically stuck there.
Yeah.
But if I can see the trend and understand why it works sociologically and musically, and then intentionally choose to use it or subvert it for a specific effect, that's the growth Keegan is talking about.
That's it.
That's freedom.
It is. And that freedom is what allows for the highest levels of creativity. When you can make those inner rules or patterns, you can look at them, you can assess them and choose how to use them. That's the leap. It connects right to Kaufman's creativity stages,
Yeah.
Moving from mini C, which is personal creativity, toward big C, which is field changing contributions. You have to be able to see the entire field clearly to change it.
And that ties right into why growth is so hard for adults. I mean, we have decades of established frameworks and beliefs.
Exactly. Which brings in Mezirow's transformative learning and that psychological preference for assimilation. Adults, just like kids in Piaget's theory, we naturally prefer to fit new information into our existing mental boxes. Dr. Ramos made a fantastic connection there.
Oh, yeah.
He called confirmation bias, the tendency to seek out music or ideas that just validate what you already believe, the adult form of assimilation.
That's a truly humbling realization.
Yeah.
We actively seek comfort in what we already know, and music is the ultimate tool for confirming our identity or our genre beliefs.
It is. But that comfort is the enemy of capacity growth. You have to push past it. You have to accommodate new perspectives or your creative capacity just plateaus. So if we look at what this framework defines as growth, it's about increasing your capacity for choice, for nuance, and for perspective. They linked it directly to having more humility and more compassion in your work.
Which sounds kind of abstract.
It does, but it ultimately makes your music more resilient and more deeply expressive.
That makes perfect sense. Increased capacity means you can handle a wider, more complex emotional palette without just resorting to simple reactionary forms.
Okay, let's jump into the arc itself, because seeing those 6 levels mapped out really drives home the vastness of this journey.
Yeah, the jumps between the levels they're dramatic shifts in cognitive structure.
So we start at level 1, survival and sensation. This is the primal immediate response. Musically, it's all about physical impact. The pulse, the heavy beats, that wall of sound.
It's purely immediate. Make noise, Feel the rhythm, move your body. It's essential. It's the root of it all, but it is the simplest frame of perception.
Then you move to level 2, identity and belonging. And the focus shifts really quickly from that individual physical feeling to the social structure.
Right.
This is where musical choice becomes a social signifier. It's style, it's genre, it's signaling that you're part of a group.
That's where the choices are tribal. The specific sound isn't just a preference, it's a flag of affiliation. Choosing a genre based on its history, like affiliating with the fierce independence of Jello Biafra or the poetic rebellion of Tupac, it's the sound of, I belong to this tribe.
And it's the definition of who you are by the music you exclude. Now, the next stage, level 3, power and structure. That's where things get tense. This moves beyond just belonging and into asserting influence.
Right. Level 3 is where artists start using the rules and structure of music, whether it's theory, engineering, performance skill, to gain status or to critique the lower levels.
Yep.
They start asserting, this is the right way to make music, and I know it better than you do.
Exactly. It's often highly sophisticated musically, but the capacity is still subject to the need for control and validation. The technical skill is deployed to prove superiority or enforce boundaries.
Which is a key psychological contrast with the next level.
A huge one.
Because level 4, discipline and craft, that's mastery for its own sake.
Precisely. Level 4 is a huge cognitive because it insists on mastery, on structure, on polish. But the motive is internal. This is the engineer who can hear a phasing issue in a mix instantly, or the composer who knows 12 ways to resolve a cadence without even thinking. The form matters most, and sheer practice has created this autonomous, highly controlled system.
That sounds like professional mastery. Pro C. It's the point where you know the machinery so well you can control it perfectly. But the webinar implied that if you stop there, you risk becoming technically brilliant, but creatively predictable.
Which leads directly to level 5, exploration and meaning. This is where the structure you learned in level 4 gets intentionally broken. Not because you don't know the rules like a level 3 might, but because the meaning you're chasing. It transcends the rules. This is where you get concept albums, intentional genre mixing, and deeply personal artistic inquiry.
So if level 4 is mastering the perfect sonata form, level 5 is writing a sonata for instruments that shouldn't play one, just to see what kind of truth comes out of it.
That is a great way to put it.
It's the intentional search for profound personal meaning, even at the expense of polish or mass appeal.
And finally, you get to level 6, integration and transcendence. We're talking about presence, atmosphere, and the intentional use of silence. This is where the self is fully integrated into the art. The music isn't trying to prove anything, it is simply being.
That's the pinnacle, and it requires such deep awareness. It suggests the highest level of capacity involves the intentional use of silence or the control of atmosphere, which is a massive contrast to the primal heavy beats of level 1. It's true freedom.
And that brings up the central question. Why should an artist at level 6, operating on transcendence and nuance, still care about a level 1 heavy beat? And the answer they gave is so insightful. Advanced ability grants the artist the choice to operate authentically at any level.
It's not that a level 6 artist avoids a simple driving rhythm. It's that when they use it, they're choosing it intentionally from a place of integration, knowing exactly the effect and the limitation of that frame, rather than being stuck there because it's the only musical language they can access.
It is total creative freedom, born from total awareness. That's the goal.
So now we have to talk about how you actually achieve that goal, because if mere repetition doesn't expand capacity, what does? We all want the freedom of level 6, but how do we make the leap from, say, level 3 to 4 or 4 to 5?
This takes us directly back to Vygotsky's Zone of Proximal Development, the ZPD, and the concept of scaffolding. Growth requires setting tasks that are just beyond your current ability. If you keep doing what you're already good at, you get better at that skill, sure, but you don't expand your cognitive capacity to handle greater complexity.
That's the practical challenge for every musician. Simple practice, just running the same scales, mixing the same type of music, writing in the same style, it's ineffective for capacity growth.
Right.
You need a structured curriculum, intense reflection, and directed feedback that forces you outside your comfort zone.
And critically, that feedback should ideally come from coaches or mentors who are already operating at or above the target developmental level. Someone who has made the transition you're trying to make can see your creative blind spots, the place where you are still subject to your own assumptions.
Which brings us to the most difficult takeaway for me. That growth demands intentional failure. We're talking about the disorienting dilemma, that intentional disruption you need to push your ability beyond the current ZPD.
You need to be genuinely confused. It's that moment where your old ways of doing things just stop working and you have to adopt a whole new framework to solve the problem.
So that confusion.
That confusion is the sound of accommodation beginning.
Creatively, you have to intentionally enter an uncomfortable space, like writing a piece with a rhythmic constraint you hate, or collaborating with someone whose aesthetic deeply challenges yours.
Or using an instrument you've never touched before.
Exactly. You are forcing the need for a new perspective.
Right.
But the webinar also addressed the vulnerability of creative capacity, which I think is crucial for you, the learner, to hear.
Oh, absolutely.
That part about stress and trauma really resonated. They discussed how life stress can cause temporary regressions to earlier expressive levels.
Yeah.
When you're under pressure, a tight deadline, emotional distress, you revert to simpler, safer means of expression, like level 1 or 2. You're just seeking sensation or belonging because complexity feels overwhelming.
It's your system just seeking stability. But the fascinating counterpoint they made was that structured recovery programs like AA or Celebrate Recovery can actually serve as powerful developmental paths.
Right.
Because they enforce structure, reflection, and radical perspective transformation, which are the very engines of capacity growth that Dr. Ramos outlined.
So this raises a really important question.
Oh.
How do we build the resilience to maintain our peak level even when life tries to pull us down? It seems like it requires an ongoing, mindful commitment to that structured curriculum, even outside of the studio.
It does. It means making development a conscious priority, treating it as seriously as learning a new instrument.
So, wrapping all this up, the core mission for you, the listener, seems clear. Awareness is the door. You have to recognize where you are and what your creative blind spots are. And that awareness has to be followed by a dedicated, structured curriculum and mentorship that intentionally challenges your capacity.
And if the solution is mentorship and structured feedback, they provided resources for that exact challenge.
Yeah, they did.
For example, they announced the Drop Shop, which is basically a guided ZPD exercise. You can submit a song, an MP3, or a wave for expert review. That kind of targeted feedback is exactly what you need to catalyze accommodation.
They also announced that upcoming AI-focused session with G3, which will undoubtedly create a disorienting dilemma for everyone in music right now, is going to force an accommodation in how we all think about authorship and process.
For sure. And for those seeking that full structured context for growth, they mentioned the upcoming Music Alliance info session on January 15th and the invitation to explore their membership. These are all practical steps to move from accidental practice to intentional growth.
All incredible resources.
Yeah.
But let's leave you with one final provocative thought based on everything we discussed today. Consider where your current creative comfort zone lies. What is the task that is just beyond your current ability, where failure is likely, but the reward is a leap in capacity? What specific disorienting dilemma could you intentionally introduce this week? A collaboration, a genre shift, a compositional constraint to test the boundaries of your ZPD.
Yeah, think about embracing that discomfort, because that feeling of confusion and struggle, that means you are finally accommodating, not just assimilating. And if you missed the full webinar and all the nuance on how these levels interact,
You have to watch it.
go watch it. It's absolutely worth it from start to finish.